Good to see you all again. We're back with episode 3 of 5, adding a cleanup crew and fish to your tank. We have kind of a ridiculous amount to cover today, so let's jump right in. What is a cleanup crew? It's a collection of animals, fish, and invertebrates that are added to your tank to perform a certain task, to clean something up. Cleanup crews clean algae off of the glass and rockwork, they eat leftover fish food, and they keep the sandbed clean and aerated. The most common members of a cleanup crew are snails, hermit crabs, sea urchins, conchs, utilitarian fish, and shrimp. How do I choose the right cleanup crew for my aquarium? Well, luckily our tank's only 15 gallons, so we're kind of limited by the smaller size. Large algae-eating fish are just too big, and so are algae-eating blennies, sand-sifting gobies, and sand-sifting starfish. Let's start with snails then. There are algae-eating snails and meat-eating snails, and we want a combination of both. Some will live their entire lives in the sandbed, and others will scour the rockwork and glass all the time. Some are really big and can cover a lot of ground, but smaller snails can get into tiny nooks and crevices better. 10 snails is a great starting point for our 15-gallon tank, and let's do a mix of 5 carnivores and 5 herbivores. For the herbivores, let's go with small to medium-sized snails, something like trochus snails, nerite snails, and astrea snails. For our 5 carnivorous snails, the sand-dwelling and small cerith snails are the perfect fit. Moving on to hermit crabs, let's do 5 in total and choose between the really small blue or red leg varieties. Hermit crabs are absolutely fantastic members of a cleanup crew because they are omnivores and they will scour everywhere, the rockwork, the sandbed, and eat little leftover pieces of algae and meaty foods. Do yourself a favor though and pick up at least 5 extra shells that are slightly bigger than their current shells because as they grow, they may need a slightly bigger home. Shrimp are not only great at eating leftover food, they are super fun to watch and they have really interesting personalities. But if they are not well fed, they have been known to nip at some corals or even steal food directly from anemones. I'm going to add 3 shrimp to my tank, which may be a bit overkill, so I need to make sure I keep them really well fed. Hawaiian skunk cleaner and blood red fire shrimp are 2 good, slightly larger options that will add a fun splash of color to your tank. I'm going with 1 Hawaiian skunk cleaner. I'm also adding 2 peppermint shrimp. These wily striped shrimp are great hunters and they will go after meaty foods with reckless abandon, so I'm gonna make doubly sure I keep them well fed. The last member of my cleanup crew is gonna be a small tuxedo or pincushion sea urchin. These sea urchins are voracious algae eaters and they are so good that after they clean a patch of rockwork, you can sometimes see the pigment actually missing from the rock itself. Once you've decided upon and picked up your cleanup crew, we are going to acclimate them before adding them to our tank. Take the bag with the cleanup crew members, give it a quick rinse with tap water to remove any water from the local fish store. Then push the light to the side and float the bag in the aquarium for 30 minutes. This will equalize the temperature between the two. After 30 minutes, remove the bags and pour all of your cleanup crew members with the water into a bowl. We don't want to add any of the local fish store water from the bags into our tanks as they may contain pests that we just don't want there. Take a quick look at your snails and hermit crab shells and use a brush to remove any algae. Now quickly and gently transfer all of the cleanup crew to your tank. Place the algae-eating snails upright either on the sandbed near the glass or on the rockwork. Do the same with the urchin. Just place the shrimp, hermit crabs, and meat-eating snails on the sandbed as they'll find their own home. Your cleanup crew needs to eat, and until a few weeks or even a couple months go by and your tank fully matures, you'll likely need to add in some food specifically for them. For the algae eaters, Hikari algae wafers are perfect, as well as seaweed extreme pellet food. For the shrimp, they will love these cobalt aquatic shrimp pellets. And everybody else will be happy with just standard fish food, which we'll talk about shortly. Once you see film algae growing on the glass, that likely means you won't need to feed the algae wafers or Hikari Extreme pellets. One word of caution, it's really easy to overfeed, especially in a small tank like this one. So when I say feed algae wafers, I mean don't give your tank more than a half an algae wafer a day, and sometimes a quarter of a wafer is plenty. Adding a cleanup crew is not a one and done deal because a lot of these little critters have a short lifespan. So keep an eye, and if you start noticing more algae growing on the glass or a whole bunch of leftover food, it may be time to add some more cleanup crew members to your tank. Choosing the right fish for our tank is really easy because our tank is small, so we can only have a few small, peaceful fish. Rather than list off all the types of fish that could work, here are 3 options of fish combinations that will absolutely work in a 15-gallon aquarium. Option number 1, 2 percula or ocellaris clownfish, and a yasha or shrimp goby with pistol shrimp. Option number 2, the shrimp goby and pistol shrimp, 3 schooling masked gobies, and a clown goby. Option number 3, 2 saltwater conditioned mollies, a clown goby, and a yasha goby pistol shrimp pair. Choosing healthy fish. When you're a complete beginner, it's really difficult to notice the subtle signs of fish illness, disease, and infection, but here are a few things to look out for. Number 1, no appetite. Ask your local fish store to feed the fish. If they readily eat, it's a good sign, and if not, stay away. Number 2, flashing. If the fish you're looking to purchase suddenly dashes and hits its side against a rock, we call that behavior flashing, and it can be a bad sign, meaning there's some sort of parasite on the outside of that fish. So if you see flashing, just stay away from that fish. Number 3, sloughing skin. Okay, I know fish don't have skin, but it looks like a translucent white skin is sort of peeling off the fish. It's a really bad sign, especially in clownfish. It could be something called Brooklinella, so stay away. Number 4, bulging eyes. If one eye or both eyes seem to be bulging out of the head, it's not a good sign. Number 5, white dots. If you see white dots on the fish, stay away from that fish and stay away from any fish that shares water with that fish because it could be a sign of ick or velvet. Number 6, frayed and torn fins. It could be a sign that that fish is being bullied or just a sign that overall the fish isn't healthy. And number 7, hiding or lethargy. A healthy fish shouldn't be scared and they should be active. None of these signs obviously guarantee a healthy fish, but they can definitely help you choose. If you want to virtually guarantee your fish is healthy, then buy captive bred fish directly from the breeder. Acclimation. Our first acclimation step is to lower or turn off the lights. Acclimating fish is almost the exact same as acclimating our cleanup crew, and we're going to start by rinsing off the outside of the bag in tap water. Float the bag in the aquarium water for 30 minutes, and then pour the fish and water into a bowl. Again, we don't want to add any of that local fish store water from the bag into our tanks, so we have a couple options. The first is to use a gloved hand to transfer the fish. To do this, make sure to move quickly and place your other hand over the top to make sure the fish doesn't jump. Gently lower the fish into the tank and release it. The second option is to use something like a coffee mug to transfer the fish. Scoop the fish into the mug, then place your hand over it and pour out most of the water. Then lower the entire mug into the tank and wait for the fish to swim free. Leave the light off or dimmed until the next day to reduce stress, then turn it back on. Luckily for us, all of the fish we recommended are meat eaters and will do well with a couple different foods. The first is pellet food. BRS pellets, TDO Chroma Boost, or PE pellets are all excellent choices. Just make sure you get a small pellet size, perfect for the small mouths of our fish. Second is frozen mysis shrimp. Since we have small fish with small mouths, I prefer Hikari mysis shrimp because theirs just seems to be a bit smaller than other brands. Just like with our cleanup crew, it's really easy to overfeed, especially if we're predominantly using pellets. Pellets are super nutrient dense. When I'm feeding my 2 clownfish, I'm only adding a few pellets at a time, waiting for them to finish, and only then adding some more. I'd say I feed them anywhere between 10 and 20 pellets max, and I only feed pellets during their morning feeding. In the afternoon, I always feed frozen mysis shrimp. I take 1 cube, place it in a specimen cup, and fill it with tank water. Once it thaws, I give it a spin and then pour a small amount into the tank. That 1 cube will last me 2 to 3 days. But make sure you store it in the fridge, and if it starts getting really fishy smelling, toss it and get a new cube of mysis. For some species of fish, you will definitely have to make adjustments to the diet and feeding schedule, but for all of our recommended fish, a twice-a-day feeding is the perfect amount. We're not done yet. Click here for video 4 in our 5-part series all about adding anemones to your tank, and until next time, be well and happy reefing, everybody.